The relic appeared on schedule, exactly where compliance charts predicted. High Admiral Kesh sat beneath the Council's vaulted holodome, watching Sol's outer marker bloom into resolution. One human hull. Singular. Unescorted. The display. Annotated it with apologetic efficiency, mass irregular, armor exposed, geometry inelegant. No shield bloom, no lattice flare, no elegance at all. Laughter traveled the tiered seats in polite ripples. Record the specimen, Kesh said tone. Mild. Classify as pre-integration. Clarks complied. The Council fleet, 10,000 vessels across 5 converging arcs, held station at 2.3 AU, weapons idling at standby. There was no need to rush processing. Humans were late to everything, especially, my junior tactician highlighted the hull again. No visible energy emitters, Admiral. Surface armor appears, bolted. Charming, Kesh replied. Add a note. Cultural attachment to relic forms. The legal officer leaned in, already bored. Standard annexation language. Of course, Kesh adjusted the display. Population census pending. Labor quotas provisional. Command staff subject to immediate seizure for compliance orientation. They had done this 67 times in the last century. New species arrived noisy, defiant, then learned. The Council did not conquer. It administered. Resistance was wasteful. Enslavement was efficient. Worlds were assets. Species were workforces. Morality was a ledger entry. On the screen, the human vessel rotated slowly, broadcasting nothing. A pause ticked past 12 seconds. Prompt them, Kesh said. They may not understand silence. A polite demand packet went out, translated into 41 dialects. Power down, accept boarding, submit to evaluation. The clock marked compliance windows in neat, shrinking bars. The relic did not answer. Not surprising, someone murmured. Primitive command latency. Kesh nodded. Begin. Preliminary targeting, non-lethal yields. We will need the hull intact for study. Energy capacitors hummed across the fleet, a soft choir of inevitability. Firing solutions painted the human ship in comforting geometry. Even the most conservative model predicted collapse within 90 seconds. One vessel. 10,000 answers. Processing. We'll be quick, Kesh said, already dictating the after-action brief. This species will adapt. They always did. Relics don't resist. They get catalogued. Outside the chamber, the stars did not move. Inside, the compliance timer reached 0 and quietly reset, as if embarrassed by the delay. No one noticed the human ship adjusting its vector by a fraction of a degree. Not yet. They had mistaken stillness for ignorance, and silence for fear. The human reply arrived without encryption, apology, or delay. High Admiral Kesh watched the transmission unfold across the holodome, a single carrier wave cutting through Council bandwidth priority like it had been expected. No flourish, no layered diplomatic buffers. Just a flat, wide-spectrum broadcast stamped with Sol coordinates and a timestamp synchronized to Council atomic time within 0.001 seconds. Several aides stiffened. That is, precise, the junior tactician said. Kesh did not answer. The message resolved into translated text, tone-mapped for neutrality. A human voice followed, calm, measured, neither raised nor deferential. This is the United Earth ship Resolute, it said. You are inside a sovereign system. Inspection is refused. A murmur crossed the chamber. Refusal was not unusual. Refusal without qualifiers was, the voice continued. Tribute demands are denied. Boarding attempts will be treated as hostile action. Kesh leaned forward. Pause playback. The legal officer frowned. They are declining annexation protocol. Outright. Yes, Kesh said. I heard. He gestured. Continue. The human voice did not change. You have one option. Withdraw all vessels beyond the Sol heliopause. Vector change minimum 15 degrees off plane. You have 6 minutes to comply. The timer appeared uninvited on the holodome, counting down from 360 seconds. Clean numerals, no embellishment. Someone laughed, sharp and brief. They're issuing ultimatums. To whom? Another asked. To us, the tactician said, incredulous. One ship. Kesh felt a faint irritation, not anger, administrative disruption. They misunderstand scale, he said. Clarify. Consequences. A second packet went out, firmer this time. Council authority citations, historical precedents, visualizations of compliance outcomes versus resistance outcomes. Casualty projections. Human losses exceeding 98% within the first engagement hour. The human reply returned in 2.1 seconds. Projections received, the voice said. They are incorrect. Silence followed. Not static. Silence with intent. Then, this is your final notice. Withdraw. A single line of additional data appended itself to the broadcast. Navigation corridors marked safe, gravitational shear warnings highlighted, exit vectors calculated for vessels ranging from 40 meters to 12 kilometers in length. The Council's own fleet specifications mirrored back with unsettling accuracy. They had mapped them. Who authorized this channel access? The security chief demanded. No breach detected, came the reply. They're predicting. The Baishu. Timer ticked past 180 seconds. Kesh straightened. They are stalling, preparing a spectacle. Or they believe it, the tactician said quietly. Kesh silenced him with a glance. No species believes this on first contact. He addressed the chamber. Record this as refusal to submit. Begin escalation protocol at 0. The human... Voice spoke once more, almost gentle. We are not requesting terms. A beat, we are giving them. The countdown reached 60 seconds. This was not negotiation. This was boundary setting. Kesh folded his hands, composed. So noted, he said. They will learn. Across the void, the United Earth ship Resolute held its line, weapons cold, engines steady, having already finished the conversation. The order to fire was routine, almost merciful. Escalation authorized, High Admiral Kesh said. Yield, Tier 1, containment only. Across 10,000 Council vessels, capacitors surged. Lances of coherent light stitched the dark, a disciplined web calibrated to shear shields, liquefy hulls, and leave useful debris. The range was generous, 1.8 million kilometers, well within proven envelopes. Firing solutions updated every 1.2 seconds, elegant and final. The first volley arrived on time. Energy washed over the human ship in overlapping waves, frequencies cycling through 8 optimized bands. On the holodome, expected outcomes bloomed in green. Shield collapse at 0.7 seconds, hull breach at 1.4, catastrophic failure by 3.0. None of it happened. The display hesitated, then corrected again. No shield flare, the tactician said, confused. No thermal spike. The Resolute did not glow, it did not bend. The beams struck bare armor and bled outward, spilling along angled plates and void-spaced ribs. Light scattered, refracted, and died. Heat diffused into layered mass and vanished into radiators that did not announce themselves. Damage readouts populated late and wrong. Ablation at 3%, structural compromise, 0. A second volley followed, tighter, hotter, yield increased by 40%. Still, nothing. They're venting, someone said. No, they're spacing it. Kesh leaned closer. The human hull geometry resolved into purpose. Armor, separated by void gaps measured in meters, not centimeters. Heat sinks buried deep. No single surface to overwhelm. No shield harmonics to crack. A third volley struck. Timed pulses. Focused. Convergence. The Resolute rolled, 0.6 degrees. Energy slid past. Efficiency loss at target, the system announced, tone flat. Weapon effectiveness reduced to 11%. 11%. That number hung in the chamber like a profanity. Adjust frequencies, Kesh snapped. Go wide. They did. The beams smeared, brute force replacing elegance. Power draw spiked across the fleet. The human ship absorbed it anyway, armor blackening in strips, then stabilizing. Internal temperatures peaked and fell. Radiative loss climbed, controlled and intentional. No fires, no atmosphere venting, no panic. The timer on the holodome ticked past 90 seconds of sustained fire. Casualty projections inverted themselves. Admiral, the tactician said, voice tight. Their mass distribution is absurd. They're letting the energy in and killing it inside the hull. Impossible, Kesh said, though the word tasted thin. A council cruiser on the forward arc overcompensated, pushing yield too high. Its capacitors choked. A breaker tripped. The ship drifted out of formation for 2.4 seconds. The Resolute did not fire. It did not need to. No damage. The words appeared uninvited on a side panel, flagged by an automated observer running independent verification. Armor loss averaged 4.7%. No system degradation. Crew status unknown. Assumed stable. They are not defending, someone whispered. They are enduring. Kesh straightened, irritation sharpening into something colder. Cease fire, he ordered. Recalculate. The beams cut out. Darkness returned, punctured only by the human ship, still intact, still silent. A new data packet arrived from the Resolute. Not a taunt. A report. Energy absorption efficiency observed, the human voice said. 97% non-lethal dissipation. Further fire will not improve outcomes. A pause. We recommend withdrawal. Recalibration failed. Kesh felt the room shift, not physically but in posture. Confidence recalculated itself into uncertainty. They let us hit them, the tactician said. On purpose. Yes, Kesh replied, eyes fixed on the unscarred hull. They wanted numbers. Across the void, the Resolute adjusted its orientation by another fraction of a degree, presenting fresh armor as if inviting the next lesson. The Council fleet had fired first and learned nothing had been achieved. They moved before the Council finished recalculating. The Resolute's engines ignited without flare or warning, a clean vector change that registered a half-second late on Council sensors. No charge-up, no signature bloom, just motion. Track acceleration, Kesh ordered. Numbers spilled across. The holodome then spiked hard enough to redraw scales. 12G, the tactician said. Sustained. That drew real silence. No Council hull could tolerate that profile without structural shedding. No crew survived it conscious. Even drones were limited by frame stress. The Resolute did not shudder. It did not bleed heat. It compressed. Inertia into mass and accepted it. Distance collapsed. From 1.8 million kilometers to 900,000 in under 40 seconds. They're closing, someone said unnecessarily. The human ship did not come straight on. It cut diagonally through the engagement sphere, threading predicted firing corridors with geometric indifference. Council targeting suites struggled, leading indicators chasing a solution that kept evaporating. Every 0.5 seconds, the Resolute adjusted vector by fractions. 0.3 degrees, 0.7. Never enough to look evasive, always enough to invalidate a firing solution. Formation theory unraveled first. The Council fleet's 5 arcs were designed for standoff. Dominance, overlapping fields of fire at fixed ranges. The Resolute did not respect range, it respected timing. As it crossed the outer arc, ships began to maneuver to maintain coverage, creating microgaps measured in kilometers. The human ship passed through them like a blade. Loss of cohesion, the system announced. Arc 3 integrity down 18%. Kesh. Watched icons drift, then cluster, then overcorrect. Vessels bumped minimum separation limits, throttling engines to avoid collision. Others lagged, their command delays, 0.4 seconds, then 0.6, compounding into disorder. They're forcing us to maneuver, the tactician said. We're chasing their vector. Impossible, Kesh said again, softer now. The Resolute surged past the first arc entirely, decelerated for exactly 3 seconds, then pivoted around its center mass. The maneuver cost it nothing and forced 6 Council cruisers to break formation to avoid mutual interference. No shots fired, just movement. A proximity alarm chimed as the human ship crossed 200,000 kilometers, then 120,000. At that range, Council energy weapons lost their elegance, convergence cones narrowing, risk of friendly overlap rising. Command hesitated, orders stacked. The fleet slowed itself down, the Resolute accelerated again. 12G, still 12. They're inside the envelope, someone said. They're behind us. Kesh saw it then. The human ship had not charged the fleet. It had cut its spine. Command and control nodes fell out of alignment. Relay lag stretching to 1.2 seconds. Enough to matter. Enough to kill synchronization. On the holodome, the Council fleet no longer looked like a weapon. It looked like traffic. The Resolute slid through the center mass and rolled, presenting broadside not in challenge, but in calculation. Its engines flared once more, a controlled burn that repositioned it precisely where Council firing arcs overlapped least. 12 G vectors. The phrase appeared on a diagnostic overlay, tagged by a human analytics suite feeding back through open. Channels. Not a boast, a label. Kesh felt the truth settle, heavy and undeniable. They're not faster, he said. They're earlier. The Resolute leveled out, speed bleeding off just enough to hold position relative to the now disordered fleet. For the first time since contact, it aligned its nose deliberately. Weapons were still cold, but geometry had already done the damage. The Council fleet was no longer facing an opponent. It was facing a problem it could not rearrange itself to solve. The first human shot was almost polite. A narrow-band ping lanced outward from the Resolute, not a weapon but a rangefinder, sweeping across the densest knot of Council icons. Command vessels, relay hubs, the ships that made the rest make sense. Targeting. Spike detected, the tactician said, but no energy. The railgun fired. There was no flash, no beam, just a mass reading that appeared too late to matter. A tungsten slug, 18 kilograms, accelerated to 0.04 C over 1,200 meters of barrel, crossed 110,000 kilometers in under a second. The Council flagship's forward hull ceased to exist. Not exploded. Removed. Armor, internal decks, and command core vanished in a line so clean the aft sections took 0.3 seconds to realize they were no longer attached. Then atmosphere vented, then power failed. Flagship lost, the system announced. No survivors detected. The second shot followed 0.8 seconds later. Another command vessel. Another precise subtraction. Different vector. Same result. The holodome filled with red where green had been. They're firing kinetics, someone said, voice thin. At this range. The Resolute did not pause. It adjusted by 0.5 degrees and launched a missile spread. 64 bodies, cold, silent, coasting on initial impulse. Council point defenses woke late, optimized for energy threats, not inert shapes with minimal signatures. The missiles split at 30,000 kilometers. Each became 6. 84 warheads bloomed outward, then curved back in, threading through the gaps geometry had already opened. Defensive fire caught 112 of them. The rest hit within a 2-second window. No saturation, no waste. 2 cruisers folded inward as shaped charges punched through reactor housings. A carrier lost thrust, then gravity, then cohesion as internal bulkheads. Failed in sequence. Kesh stood frozen, watching numbers stack. Time from first shot to third kill, the tactician said. 4.6 seconds. A heavier launch followed. The Resolute's spine opened along 3 recessed ports. What emerged was slower, unmistakable. Nuclear signatures, the system warned. Yield estimates 1.2 megatons each. They were not thrown blindly. 3 devices arced toward the remaining command cluster, detonating at calculated distances. Far enough to spare hulls meant for capture, close enough to collapse shields and fry unprotected systems. The shockwaves overlapped. One command ship survived the blast and died anyway when its crew blacked out under EMP surge and the vessel drifted into the debris field of its neighbors. 5 command vessels. Gone. The Council fleet's coordination shattered in real time. Fire control lag jumped from 1.2 seconds to 3.8. Orders duplicated, contradicted, vanished. Ships fired where allies had been moments earlier, then cut power to avoid fratricide. The Resolute kept shooting. Railgun slugs stitched through disabled hulls, each impact logged, timed, and counted. Missiles finished what kinetics opened. No shot repeated a function already achieved. This was not fury. This was accounting. Flagship lost. The words flashed again, this time accompanied by a counter. 3 of 3 primary command nodes neutralized. Kesh found his voice. "Cease," he began, then stopped. There was no one left to hear him. A data burst arrived from the Resolute, riding the chaos like it owned the channel. "Command vessels neutralized," the human voice said. "Further resistance will result in continued losses at current efficiency." Efficiency. The word landed harder than any warhead. A second line followed, colder. "Civilian transports and medical hulls are not targeted." The Resolute held position, guns hot now, vectors solved, targets catalogued. It did not chase fleeing ships. It did not fire into panicked clusters when a single disabled hull would suffice. Numbers continued to update. Engagement duration: 6 minutes. Elapsed. Confirmed kills: 11 major hulls, human losses 0. Kesh sagged into his chair, the truth finally unignorable. The humans had not escalated, they had concluded. Outside the chamber, debris fields expanded in slow, glittering arcs, marking where authority used to be. The Council fleet still had thousands of ships. It no longer had a center, and the Resolute, calm and unhurried, began aligning its next firing solutions, as if the first lesson had merely been introductory. The guns went quiet by choice. A crossword. The fractured battlespace. Council vessels drifted or held position, engines throttled down by confusion rather than command. Fires burned where discipline had failed. Escape vectors lay open, unpursued. The broadcast cut through every channel at once, not a threat packet, not a demand stack, a declaration. "This transmission is addressed to all vessels, all systems, all observers," the human voice said. It was the same voice as before, steady, unraised, unhurried. "This engagement is paused, not ended." Kesh looked up as the holodome shifted from tactical overlays to a wide-spectrum relay map. The signal was not narrowcast. It was going everywhere. Council relay nodes, neutral trade nets, border observatories up to 14 light-years. Out. Humanity was not speaking to the fleet. It was speaking to the galaxy. "We are the United Earth polity," the voice continued. "Our laws govern our actions, even in war." A brief pause followed, long enough to be deliberate. "We do not practice slavery. We do not process populations. We do not erase cultures for efficiency." Those words landed harder than the railgun. Had. "Any vessel that powers down and ceases fire will not be targeted. Crews who surrender will be taken as prisoners of war under human law." Icons flickered on the display as ships tested the claim. One frigate cut weapons and bled thrust. The Resolute did nothing. Another followed. Then 3 more. "Surrendered personnel will receive medical care," the broadcast said. "They will be housed. They will be fed. They will not be harmed." Kesh felt a chill. This was not mercy as spectacle. This was policy. Command personnel responsible for enslavement, population seizure, or extermination orders will be detained. Impending trial, the voice continued. Trials will be public. Evidence will be recorded. Sentences will follow law, not revenge. A line appeared beneath the words, stark and unmistakable. "We don't kill prisoners." The legal officer swallowed. "They're asserting jurisdiction." "Yes," Kesh said quietly, "and inviting witnesses." Numbers rolled in at the edge of the display. Ships powered down. 214. Medical hulls broadcasting compliance. 39. Escape. Attempts ignored. All. The Council fleet was learning a new rule set in real time. "You have 18 minutes to signal surrender," the human voice said. "After that, we will resume operations against armed vessels only." Only. That single word redrew the moral geometry of the engagement. A secondary packet followed. Coordinates for safe corridors, rendezvous points for prisoner transfer, medship, docking protocols translated into Council standards with unsettling fluency. The humans had prepared for this part, too. Kesh watched as a wounded cruiser limped toward one of the marked zones. No shot followed. No correction fire. The corridor held. "They mean it," the tactician said. "Yes," Kesh replied. "That's the problem." The broadcast ended without flourish. No anthem. No flag. Just law. transmitted at the speed of. Late around Sol, surrender beacons began to outnumber weapons locks. Authority did not collapse all at once. It drained away, replaced by something colder and more durable. The Resolute remained motionless, weapons ready but restrained, as if daring the galaxy to test whether justice could be enforced with the same precision as destruction. And in the quiet that followed, the battle stopped being about who would win. It became about who would be judged next. They had been watching longer than anyone realized. The first confirmation did not come from the Council, but from neutral space. An observer buoy at the Helios. Verge, chartered, independent, ignored. Pushed a data burst into every open channel it could reach. Old telemetry. Archived sensor ghosts. Patterns no one had thought to reassemble. Multiple mass signatures, the analyst voice said. Breath, tight with disbelief. Not new arrivals, long-duration stations, the holodome split. Beyond the Sol engagement sphere, faint markers resolved into clarity. Human hulls, embedded in shadowed orbits, parked inside radiation wells, nested along cometary paths. Cold. Dark. Waiting. Count? Someone asked. 67 confirmed, the analyst replied. Possibly more beyond resolution. 67. Not reinforcements. Not a scramble. A posture. They didn't come to meet us, the tactician said. They were already here. More feeds joined the chorus. A coalition. Science vessel replayed gravimetric anomalies from 40 years prior, dismissed at the time as stellar noise. A Trade Guild archive surfaced maintenance logs from refueling depots that should not have existed yet. A border patrol released jump lag data showing human task groups repositioning months before first contact, always just inside acceptable. Margins. Preparation was not recent. They've been rehearsing this, the legal officer said slowly. 4 generations. A human transmission followed, not broadcast wide, but shared openly with observers who had requested clarification. Schematics, doctrine excerpts, training cycles dated back 200 years, updated iteratively, annotated with failures, corrections, refinements. Doctrine Maturity Index, 0.98. Human naval doctrine stabilized 2 centuries ago, the analyst read. Core principles unchanged since first interstellar conflict. No wonder there was no hesitation, no improvisation. This was muscle memory on a civilizational scale. They expected us, Kesh said, the realization heavy. Not specifically. Inevitably. More data surfaced. Fleet drills conducted at fractional gravity to simulate 12G burns. Armor test footage showing energy saturation curves plateauing exactly where Council weapons had peaked. War games modeling multi-arc fleets with elegant names, replaced by blunt labels. Target Cluster A, spine cut. Command removal. This battle had been fought thousands of times already. A final observer feed resolved the last doubt. Deep space sensors detected human logistics ships cycling reactors far from Sol, holding steady reserves. Hospitals powered and staffed. Detention facilities active, empty, waiting. They planned for prisoners, the tactician whispered. Before they fired. Ready for centuries. The words appeared as an overlay on the analyst's screen, auto-tagged by a coalition intelligence. Sweet, not propaganda. A conclusion. Kesh felt the weight of it settle into place. The Council's advantage had always been speed. Arrive, overwhelm, process, move on. Humanity had inverted the timeline. They had slowed everything down, stretched readiness across centuries until response became automatic. Across the battlespace, more surrender beacons lit. Not because of fear alone, but because resistance now looked childish. The Resolute did not move. Neither did the hidden fleet. There was no rush. This was not a species improvising survival. This was a civilization executing a plan that had outlived its original authors, refined by their descendants, and kept ready by a culture that never forgot why it armed itself in the first place. The galaxy had not stumbled into a war. It had finally arrived at one humanity had been prepared to finish for a very long time. Neutralization began when resistance failed to coordinate. With command nodes erased and doctrine fractured, the remaining Council vessels acted as individuals instead of a fleet. Some powered down, some ran. Some fired out of reflex, short, panicked bursts that achieved nothing. The humans answered with structure. Missile bays along the Resolute's flanks opened in sequence, not a storm, a cadence. Waves of cold-launched bodies peeled away. 120 in. The first release, 180 in the second, each assigned a narrow task envelope. Disable engines, cut weapons, blind sensors, no redundancies wasted. Council point defenses tried to adapt. They were too late. The missiles flew dark until terminal approach, altering course at pre-computed intervals that exploited the fleets. Broken geometry, impacts were surgical, thrusters vanished, weapon mounts sheared away. Power spines cracked and went quiet. Disabled ships drifted. Surrender beacons increasing, the system announced. Now at 1,040 vessels. The Resolute adjusted position by 20 kilometers and launched again. This time, boarding pods. They were blunt cylinders, ugly and overbuilt, accelerating hard before cutting thrust and coasting into collision vectors. No finesse, no warning. They struck hulls at controlled angles, magnetic clamps biting through scorched armor, breaching charges, punching clean entry points. Human Marines followed. They moved fast and quiet, mag boots locking, rifles low but ready. Compartments were cleared in minutes. Resistance ended faster. Council crews, stunned and leaderless, dropped weapons when ordered. Those who did not were restrained, not shot, taken down by mass and numbers rather than fire. Casualty counters updated in real time. Human wounded, 17. Council wounded, 2,340. Council dead, 412. The imbalance was deliberate. Weapons cold, the human voice reminded boarding teams over open channel. Secure, stabilize, tag. Tag meant evidence, command logs, slavery manifests, population transfer orders. Every captured vessel became a data source, its crimes preserved before anyone could erase them. Outside, missile waves continued their work. Not all ships surrendered at once. Some tried to flee along vectors the humans had already marked as inefficient. They were intercepted by fast movers from the shadowed fleet. Ships that revealed themselves only long enough to block escape, force deceleration, and hold position. No chase. Running ships were not destroyed. They were tired. Surrender cascade accelerating, the system reported. Now at 3,800 vessels. The number climbed as if pulled by gravity. A cluster of Council destroyers attempted a coordinated push toward the outer arc, firing wildly, to clear space. The Resolute answered with a single railgun volley. 3 slugs, 3 impacts, engines removed without breaching crew compartments. The destroyers spun, helpless. Boarding authorized! The words flashed briefly on multiple channels, human and alien alike. Kesh watched from the shattered remains of his flagship's command deck, now dark and cold. He had survived the first strike. By accident, sealed behind emergency bulkheads. Now he watched authority dissolve, not in fire, but in procedure. "This is dismantlement," he whispered. "Yes," the tactician replied beside him, hands bound, voice steady. By design. Across the battle space, medships moved freely, marked and respected. Human crews coordinated triage with captured Council medical officers, protocols translated and mirrored. Wounded were treated without interrogation. Prisoners were logged, housed, fed. More numbers appeared. Total surrendered vessels, 6,200. Boarded and secured, 2,900. Active resistance, 417 and falling. The remaining holdouts tried one last tactic, overloading reactors to deny capture. Human Marines withdrew immediately. Missile strikes followed, precise and final, vaporizing the ships before detonation could scatter debris into civilian lanes. "No prisoners when none are offered," the human voice stated. Without heat. Silence followed each destruction, heavy and instructive. Within 3 hours, organized resistance ended. The Council fleet did not die screaming. It fell apart, ship by ship, choice by choice, until surrender was not an act of fear but the only remaining rational option. Total neutralized. The overlay appeared as the last weapons lock blinked out. The Resolute powered down its railgun capacitors and rotated slowly, surveying the field. Around it floated thousands of inert hulls, beacon lights pulsing in surrender cadence. Human ships held perimeter positions, not triumphant, just thorough. Kesh felt the final truth settle in his chest. This was not extermination, it was enforcement. The galaxy had long believed dominance required cruelty. Humanity had demonstrated something far more terrifying: the ability to stop precisely when it chose to and still remain in control. As prisoner transfers began and the last missile wave returned to racks unused, the battle transitioned, cleanly, deliberately, into occupation and accounting. And somewhere beyond the captured fleet, beyond the quiet lines of human ships holding watch, sensors continued to listen, because this operation had never been the end state. It had only been one, the boys executed exactly as planned. Mercy arrived wearing restraints and medical tags. The first transfers began within an hour. Council crews were moved under guard, not to cells, but to triage bays assembled from modular human hulls. Wounded were stabilized before identification. Rank was recorded after bleeding stopped. Kesh watched from a transparent partition as his surviving officers were processed in sequence. Names logged, injuries scanned, personal effects sealed and catalogued. No blows, no shouted orders, just procedure. Prisoner count, a human officer said aloud. 40,312. Update every 10 minutes. Numbers mattered here too. Medical teams worked in silence, broken only by vitals alarms. A council engineer, with a crushed thorax, was intubated beside a human marine with shrapnel in his leg. Same care, same urgency. The message required no translation. "This is irregular," Kesh said to the human guard assigned to him. "Yes," the guard replied. "It's called law." Processing stations lit up across Sol orbit, each marked with jurisdiction codes and evidentiary intake protocols. Data extracted from captured ships streamed into secured archives. Labor manifests, population seizure orders, extermination authorizations signed and countersigned. Every crime had a paper trail. "You will be informed of charges," the human voice announced over the detention channel. "You will have counsel. You will stand trial." A pause. "Some of you will be acquitted." That landed harder than any sentence. "We don't kill prisoners." The line appeared again, etched into the detention interface like a rule that could not be appealed. Beyond Sol, the galaxy reacted. Neutral systems that had watched the engagement in silence began transmitting inquiries. Not pleas, not threats, but legal questions. Jurisdiction scopes, treaty compatibility, enforcement limits. Earth answered them all, publicly, with citations and case law. The effect was immediate. A border system 3 jumps spinward of Sol declared withdrawal from council authority within 14 hours. Another followed, then 5 more. Their declarations were identical in structure, differing only in signature blocks. Reason cited: transfer to Earth-recognized legal protection. Sovereignty shift detected, an analyst reported. 17. Systems in motion. Trade lanes rerouting. Human fleets did not move to occupy them. Legal teams did. Courts were established before garrisons. Observers invited. Proceedings streamed without delay. Charges read aloud. Evidence displayed. Testimony recorded. Kesh sat through the first session, hands still bound, listening as a prosecutor enumerated counts with clinical restraint. No insults, no dramatics, just facts: slavery, forced relocation, extermination planning. Each count carried a statute reference and a maximum sentence. When asked to respond, Kesh found his voice steady. "I acknowledge jurisdiction," he said. Chamber did not react. A clerk noted the response and moved on. Outside, surrender beacons were replaced by compliance signals. Former council patrol ships accepted human inspectors without resistance. Merchant guilds updated contracts to reflect new arbitration authority. The shift was quiet, relentless. Justice, not vengeance. The words flashed once on a public relay, then vanished. By the end of the cycle, prisoner transfers stabilized, 40,000 souls accounted for, medical mortality under 0.8%. No retaliatory actions recorded. Human ships held position, watchful but restrained, as if daring anyone to mistake mercy for weakness. Kesh understood then what had truly been destroyed. Not a fleet. Not an empire. A monopoly on force without consequence, as the first trial recessed and the second queued automatically. Seoul no longer looked like a battlefield. It looked like a court, and courts, once established, have a way of attracting the desperate, the wronged, and the finally hopeful. The galaxy was already lining up. The silence after victory lasted exactly 27 seconds. Then the alert chimed. Low priority at first, almost polite. A passive sensor ping from a listening array far beyond Seoul's heliopause, routed through 3 verification layers before anyone allowed it onto a shared display. Unknown signature, the system announced. Outer Rim origin, the Resolute. Did not move. Human ships held formation, prisoner transfers continuing without interruption. Justice did not pause for noise. Define unknown, a watch officer said. The analyst swallowed. Profile mismatch, not council, not coalition. Mass shadow exceeds predicted hull limits by a factor of 12. The holodome reconfigured. The familiar clutter of surrendered vessels and medical lanes faded, replaced by a sparse starfield at the galaxy's edge. There, barely visible, was a pattern in the dark. Not a ship. A wake. Distance estimate, 41 light-years. Velocity, relativistic cruise, 0.08 c. Course, inward. No transponder, no emissions beyond residual gravitic distortion. Kesh watched from custody, recognizing the tone shift before the words arrived. This was not fear. It was focus. Cross-reference, the human commander said. Archive everything. Databases churned, ancient probes, pre-council myths, fringe extinction events dismissed as stellar anomalies, a handful aligned imperfectly into something resembling a curve. Designation populated on the screen. Provisional. An understated, outer rim exterminator class. Historical contact? Someone asked. None confirmed, the analyst replied. But 12 systems along the rim went silent over the last 4 millennia. No debris fields, no signals, just absence. A quiet settled, heavier than celebration, heavier than loss. The human commander nodded once. Update readiness condition. Around Seoul, engines did not flare, weapons did not arm. Instead, fleets adjusted by kilometers, aligning lanes, reopening sealed channels. Logistics ships altered cycles. Hospitals expanded capacity. Courts finalized dockets and queued adjournments without urgency. Preparation resumed. This engagement is concluded, the human voice broadcast, galaxy-wide. Proceedings will continue. A pause, then a second line added. Not for reassurance, but for accuracy. Further operations may be required. No one laughed. On the edge display, the distant wake persisted, unchanged by observation. Whatever had erased worlds did not announce itself. It did not negotiate. It did not process populations. It simply arrived. Time to intercept if course holds? The tactician asked. The analyst ran the numbers twice. 6 to 8 years. Plenty of time. The Resolute rotated, slow and deliberate, reorienting its long axis not toward the broken council fleet, but toward the dark between stars. Hidden. Human ships adjusted in sympathy, ancient readiness flowing back into place. Kesh exhaled, a sound halfway between relief and dread. He understood now why mercy had been non-negotiable. You do not face what is coming with a galaxy built on fear. You face it with law, with unity, and with weapons held in steady hands. Beyond the quiet rim, something old was moving, and for the first time in a very long while, it was moving toward a species that had been waiting.